Hello and welcome everybody. Thank you so much for joining another SciFest Africa event. February marks the penultimate month of our virtual festival, so thank you so much for joining us on this digital journey. We really do appreciate your continued interest and support. The theme for this month is Indigenous Knowledge Systems, which celebrates the importance of Indigenous knowledge systems and ways of knowing in all fields, from design to education to fishing. Indigenous knowledge, learned and passed down through generations, has a critical role to play in shaping, informing, and guiding science, technology, engineering, mathematics, innovation, the arts, and industry. Today, we are excited to bring you another installment of our Discover workshop series, where the wonderful Dr. T will walk us through fun and engaging live science demonstrations that parents and children can participate in using basic ingredients from home. Welcome, everyone. Welcome to our Facebook Live viewers. As always, these workshops are recorded and previous ones can be found on our website and Facebook as well. We encourage you to tell your friends, tell your teachers, tell your classmates and students, and let's get kids interested in science. In case you haven't joined us before for these workshops, Tanya Reinhardt, Dr. T, is the Science Centre Coordinator at the Science and Technology Education Centre at the University of KwaZulu-Natal. She was instrumental in establishing the STDC in 2008 and has grown it from a science museum to a vibrant educational centre for various levels. Apart from developing and delivering workshops, she has a passion for science shows. Her love for rocks, gadgets, and experiments makes her a frequent guest at events such as the Royal Show, Zulfest, and our own SciFest Africa. Her Germanic sense of humour and her passion for geology has won her awards as Best Workshop Presenter at SciFest Africa in 2013, 17, and 19. She holds a diploma and a PhD in mineralogy from the Ruhr University Bochum in Germany. Participation and questions are encouraged. Please unmute if you have a question, and otherwise please be sure to keep your microphone muted. On that note, Tanya, I'll pass on to you.
Thanks, Steph, and yeah, welcome everybody. It was actually not planned. I was supposed to sit in my museum and run this workshop at my museum so you can see all these lovely rocks and fossils that I have there. But unfortunately, we had load shedding, so I had to move back and to a place where there is electricity. So here I am, back in Durban again, and welcome everybody to our workshop on Discover Fossils. And what we're going to do today is we're going to talk a little bit about fossils. I'm going to show you how you can make your own fake fossil. And yeah, and hopefully you're going to have fun. If there is any question, please remember, you can always interrupt me, unmute yourself, ask the question. Or if you're too scared, you can also type it in and Steph will then basically read it out to me. Right, so let's get going. So today, what you're going to need is, you are going to need modeling clay, 1 cup of plaster of Paris, or half a cup of plaster of Paris should also do, water, a small paper or polystyrene cup. If you have leaves, plastic dinosaurs or bugs, shells or twigs or anything small that you want to turn into a fossil, an old large yogurt pot or bowl to mix the plaster in, an old spoon or plastic spoon or wooden stirrer or chopstick, so anything that you can stir with. And if you're a messy person like I am, paper towels is also quite handy. So you can see already some fossils here, and so the dinosaurs and these skeletons and so on, they are in fact from a place in China that I was privileged to visit, and it was such an awesome experience to see, you know, dinosaur fossils in situ, Tyrannosaurus rex fossils in situ in its natural environment. Really, really awesome. Okay, so what I'm going to do is, first I'm going to quickly run through how we're going to do this, how to make a fossil, and then we're going to go on and I'll switch on to my camera and I'm going to show you how to do this. So in the first step, we're going to flatten a ball of modeling clay until it is about 2 centimeters thick. And then we got to put the modeling clay inside a paper or styrofoam cup with a smooth side facing up. So you should have a smooth side. So not like, you know, ridges and so on. So if you think about it, so we are simulating how basically a fossil forms. So this clay that you're going to use is just like mud or sand that once living organisms fell onto. And then we carefully press the object that we want to fossilize into the modeling clay until it's partially buried. So it's basically your living organism, or now dad is going to fall onto the bed of clay or sand and so on. And then it starts doing something. And what we're then going to do is we're going to remove the object and from the modeling clay, and you get an impression of the object. And this is basically that the organism, in real life, the organism dissolves and leaving only its imprint behind. And then what we're going to do is we're going to put half a cup of plaster of Paris into an empty cup, and we add a quarter cup of water to the plaster. And then we use a wooden stick or something like this and stir until the mixture is smooth. So it needs to be really kind of smooth. And then we leave it for around, here it says 2 minutes, but maybe we can leave it for a minute. And then we're going to look at how the mixture is. If it has thickened a little bit, we're going to pour it on top of the modeling clay in the other cup. And then we leave the mixture until the plaster has dried. It usually takes about half an hour to 45 minutes. Okay, so basically what happens is now that the organisms that covered with sediments, so that's your plaster of Paris, and over time, so that's the waiting time that it takes us, the sediments harden and forms a sedimentary rock. So we are speeding up the process. So the process usually in real life takes forever. So, and then when the plaster has fully dried, we're going to tear away the sides of the styrofoam cup and take out the modeling clay and plaster. So basically what we're going to do is we're going to excavate the fossil. Right, so let's just dive into it. So what I've got here, this is my plaster of Paris. I've got a measuring device, and I've got another cup and something to stir with. So I'm gonna add 1, 2. So this is plenty. So you can see this is plenty. You probably won't need so much. And then we're going to add just 1 spoonful here of water. So the ratio is 2 to 1. So if you put in 4 tablespoons of plaster of Paris, you put in 2 tablespoons of water. So now you're going to start stirring, and you just have to make sure that you don't get any lumps. So it shouldn't be lumpy. So here we go. So you can see it's going to hopefully get a little bit smoother. There we go. So you can see you should get a nice smooth mixture. So we're going to let it sit for a couple of seconds. Okay. So in the meantime, what we're going to do is we're going to take our styrofoam cup, and if you have a piece of clay, this is Play-Doh that I made, so self-made Play-Doh. You're going to press it into the bottom of your styrofoam cup, just like this. And you should aim that the surface is fairly flat, so you don't have like a ridge inside. So something like this. And I've got something. So this is a replica of an ammonite that once lived here on Earth. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to press it in. So now when you press it in, just make sure, sometimes when you have a very hard clay, you have to press very hard. If you press too hard, the bottom of your styrofoam cup will out. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put my fingers at the bottom. So just to give it some extra pressure. And then I'm going to press my fossil down. Okay, so just like this. And then I'm going to carefully, whoops, remove it. And what you should have is an imprint just like I have. Okay, so in the meantime, hopefully it has thickened a little bit. So now what we're going to do is we're going to pour our plaster of Paris on top. So you can see now it's not really leveled. So what you're going to do is you're going to just kind of tap it a couple of times upside down, just like I did. Don't drop it from too high. Okay, so that gives you a smooth surface. Okay, and then we're going to put it to the side. And we'll just wait. Okay, coming back to our story. So now that we initiated the process of how we're going to make a fake fossil, we hopefully can now look into how actually what fossils are and how fossils form. So the question, of course, is what is a fossil? So we often talk about fossils and we often talk about things and everybody thinks you know it, but then do we really know it? So what is a fossil? A fossil or fossils are remains, molds, or traces of organisms that lived more than 10,000 years ago. And this is the important part, the 10,000 years ago. Okay, so molds, traces of organisms more than 10,000 years old. They were, and here again, usually preserved in rocks called sedimentary rocks. So for example, sandstones or shales. So here, this is how a sandstone looks like. Sandstones, so are rocks where you basically have beach sand and they compact and cement together. Shale, you have like a little bit of a finer grain, so finer grain than sand. And here you can see, this is one of the samples that I do have in my museum. So this is a shale, and these red things that you see here, they are leaves of a Glossopteris plant. And of course, if you talk about fossils, people often think, dinosaurs. Yes, dinosaurs are also fossils. So most people think fossils are dinosaur skeletons and large bones, but this is not the case. You can find many different types of fossils, and they can range in size. You can find something that are called microfossils, and they are so small you need a microscope to actually see them. You can also, of course, get very large fossils, just like your dinosaur skeleton. The people who study fossils are called paleontologists, and they divide these types of fossils, the different types of fossils, in body fossils and trace fossils. So we're going to have a look now what the difference is. So what are body fossils? So body fossils are basically fossilized remains of animals. So you have your bones or shells. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to just get my tablet so that I can share. Oh, here we go. So instead of taking you to the museum, I'm going to take the museum home. So here are some samples from my museum at the university. So shells. So here we have some shells. So these ones are the body fossils, shells, some bones. So we've got some bones. This is a cast of a skull. So bones or shells. And here you can see again in this picture here, so the shells like the ammonite that I was showing to you. The bones ones is a dinosaur fossil from China. And the plant leaves. Again, I can show you. So this is a real a shell with some leaves in it. Here you can see, so some Glossopteris leaves in here. So here you can see, it's a very faint imprint. So leaves are very difficult often to fossilize. So we are very fortunate to have something like this. And then we have body fossils. So these can be mold and cast fossils, replacement fossils, so like petrified wood, and whole body fossils, so mammoth caught in ice or insects trapped in amber. Okay, so unfortunately I won't be able to tell you a mammoth caught in ice, and unfortunately I won't be able to show you amber or insects trapped in amber, but I can show you a piece of a fossilized wood, and I can show you what is the mold and what is a cast. Just go back. Okay, so this would be your mold. This would be your cast. So you can see this is basically an imprint. So when you look at this, so this is your mold, and that is your cast. So what we are currently making is a cast. And what I've got here, this is a piece of fossilized wood, and you can see it has got a very shiny surface because it's been penetrated by something by silica. So, and it replaced the actual cells and of the trees. But when you look very carefully, you can actually still see, and I'll just use this one here, you can still see the tree rings here. Okay, so, and it actually feels like stone, and it's as hard as stone. All right, what else do we have? We have trace fossils, and this is actually very interesting because they record the activity of an animal. So your trace fossil can be things like footprints. So for example, dinosaur footprints. And I do have some footprints here, but unfortunately not dinosaur footprints. This is a pity, but they are not very easy to come by, and they're sometimes fairly large. So, but what I've got here, so what looks like some very strange, I don't know, features here. This is in fact some crustaceous animal that basically left their tracks behind. Okay, so you can see here. So why is it so important? Trace fossils are very important. So for example, from the tracks of dinosaurs or from the tracks of these animals, what people can find out is, or what scientists can find out is, for example, if the animals were running or just walking, how they walked. Did they walk on do they have 4 legs? Did they just have 2 legs? How heavy they were. So just by the imprint, they can figure out how heavy the animal was that left the footprint. For example, the dinosaur. Then we have something very strange, and you can probably maybe guess what it might be. These ones are in fact burrows, so worm burrows. So here you can see on the screen here. So there are basically the burrows or the worm, how it basically digged a hole. And I'm not too sure if you can guess what this might be. Any ideas? Anybody who wants to maybe tell me what they think that might be? For that, you have to unmute yourself, or you just type it in the chat. Any ideas? It looks very strange, doesn't it? So if you would have thought or guessed or made an educated guess that this is in
Features.
fact, yes, coprolite. Absolutely right. And can somebody guess what coprolite is?
A feces.
Exactly. Or just fossil poo, you know? So coprolite is in fact fossil poo. And believe me, this is super duper interesting. So if you find fossil poo, scientists can actually analyze what these animals ate. How cool is that? So, and yeah, so it's not squishy, believe me, it's not squishy. So you're lucky. And unfortunately, I don't have fossil poo. But maybe I could try and get some at one point. So the question is, how can we turn something into a fossil? So anybody who wants to volunteer? I always call myself a living fossil because I'm so old. Anybody else who wants to volunteer? It's a once in a lifetime experience. Okay, so I'll probably have to find another volunteer. So nobody of you guys want to volunteer? Okay, so I volunteered Goldi. So this is our volunteer. So Goldi, as you can see, is a hamster. And, you know, scientists or people sometimes use hamsters for things, you know, so Goldi volunteered. Okay, so first of all, and this is the unfortunately the very sad part, our volunteer needs to be dead for now. And luckily, because we have PowerPoint and so on, so we don't really kill him, but we pretend that we kill him. So Goldi is, you know, Goldi is not dead. So we also need to check if he has hard parts, for example, bones that fossilize, because it's very difficult, you know, like skins and feathers and so on, they don't usually get preserved. So this is also why scientists still are very excited if they find some skin imprints and so on. So these ones are usually not preserved. So, but what are preserved are, for example, bones. And how can we check if Goldi has bones? There's a technique called X-rays. So we're going to X-ray Goldi. So X-rays usually you can figure out, okay, with an X-ray if something has bones or if you've got a broken leg or something like this. Here we go. So there is our X-ray, and we can see hamsters do have bones. So there's the skeleton, you know, there's the skull, there's the spine, those ones are the legs, and so on. All right, perfect. Okay, so in the next step, so we established Goldi has bones. So in the next step, we actually need to make sure that he's buried quickly in mud or sand. So his body quickly needs to be covered by what we call sediments. So sediments, sand, mud, and so on. So why do you think do we actually need to cover him quickly with sediments? Any guesses? Okay, right, because of, okay, so we covered him with sediments because of these guys here, scavengers. So if he doesn't get buried, he will decay or get eaten by scavengers like cats. Okay, so this is, by the way, this is my other volunteer. That is Carlos, that is Carlos, my cat. So over a long period of time now, this skeleton gradually needs to turn hard while the sand becomes a rock. Okay, so over time now, there's more and more sediments coming on top, and gradually the flesh basically rots away, but still the bones are preserved. Okay, and then eventually they basically turn into a rock as well. So how long do I have to wait for that? A couple of thousand years. So luckily we can speed up the process a little bit, so we don't have to wait for thousands of years. And now Goldi has turned into a fossil. Okay, so thousands of years later, we now have a fossil. And Goldi is very excited because he's now a fossil. So, but the problem is we can't really get access to Goldi at the moment. So what we need to do is we need to wait a couple of million years until the rocks on the top of our volunteer are removed. So that's called erosion. And somebody will discover a new hamster fossil. So this can take millions of years, but it can also take 10,000s of years, depending on the environment. So usually your fossils are basically preserved in rocks. So we can find, for example, fossils in places, places like St. Lucia, Greater St. Lucia Wetland Park. And I know that in Grahamstown, around Grahamstown, there are also places where you can find fossils. Alongside road cuts is always a good idea to check out, and you have to look for the right rocks. Remember, sedimentary rocks. So we have erosion, and here we go. Our fossil is exposed, and then maybe someday, maybe you can find a fossil, or a paleontologist finds this fossil. And if it's a new species, you can actually name it. And so Chrysetos is basically the Latin name for hamster. And this young man here, this paleontologist, basically is calling it now Chrysetos turned into fossilos. All right. Okay. So coming back to our little fossil here. So you can see now, hopefully, and yeah, it's still a bit wet, but it should be fine. So if yours is still a little bit wet, so when you touch it and it's still squishy, don't do what I'm doing. So in the next step, what you're going to do is you just carefully peel and remove and excavate your fossil. So carefully peel it off. And mine is still a little bit wet, so it could have waited a little bit longer, but because of time. Okay. Rather wait for a couple of more minutes if you think it's still wet. So what you can also do in the plaster, you can also add some, so for example, if it breaks off like this, don't do it any further. So you can also add some sand to it, so then that it really looks like a sedimentary rock. And I'll just try to carefully. So here you can see, and I'll try to peel it off a bit. Here we go. And there's my fossil. So if you have still something on, so what you can do now is you can slowly start excavating it. And this is a process that actually scientists do as well. So there's a special job that actually does it. They are basically preparing, because usually you don't get your fossil exposed like this. So usually it's buried inside the rock, and then the guy basically takes tools, things like dentist drills and things like this, and carefully starts excavating and bringing out the features of your fossil. And sometimes these guys work years on specific fossils. And here you can see that is mine. So I'll take out a little bit. And this is my fossil. So that's one that I've done earlier on. That's a little bit better because it dried out a little bit better. So remember, this is the mold, this is the cast. And I can see that I was very quick today. So if there are any more questions. Are there any questions? Is there anything that you want me to repeat, or that you want to know, or that you want to ask for? Nobody? Nobody's talking to me? If you want to share your fossil with me, if you have made a fossil, you can share it with me. You can send me a photo to stec@ukzn.ac.za. And also, if you have any suggestions, any comments, I'm also quite happy to receive comments. Oh, from what type of fossils can you get DNA from? Unfortunately, there is no DNA in fossils unless, and this is where scientists are looking for amber fossils, so insects, so for example, mosquitoes and so on. So there are the claims that if a mosquito poked a dinosaur, that you're able to extract maybe, you know, a DNA blood from that. But usually DNA is not preserved in fossils, unfortunately. Are there any other questions? A very good question and very interesting as well. So if we would find DNA, that would be perfect, because then we would be able to maybe get a better idea of how the dinosaurs looked like and so on. So there is still kind of a little bit of a debate if dinosaurs have feathers, or they have this kind of yeah, how shall I say, this amphibian texture, you know, this like little bums and so on. So scientists now more believe that the dinosaurs actually were feathered. They found evidence for it. And I'm pretty sure that you all know that. Okay. Feathers, every now and again, they do fossilize, Sasha. That's a very good question. Feathers actually, sometimes they find imprints. So the actual feather not, but imprints. But it's very difficult to find. So the chances are very, very slim. So things like feathers and things like skins, the imprints sometimes get preserved. But the chances to find these ones are very, very slim. So bones are more resilient and more resistant than, for example, skin and feathers and so on. Okay, so there's still this debate, but they found now that they found feathers. Unfortunately, I don't have photos of that. And so scientists do believe that every now and again, so they do believe that some of them actually had feathers. So this is the case. And yeah, so are there any other questions? Maybe from the outside, Steph, are there any questions on Facebook? You can also ask questions on Facebook if you want. If not, then this is it from my side. So it was a very short workshop today. Next week, we're going to explore a little bit more about the state of matter, and I hope to see some of you back next week. And enjoy your weekend. I definitely will do. And cheers, cheers. And I'm going to give back to Steph.
Thank you so much, Tanya, for such a really fun workshop. And everyone have a wonderful weekend. I know it's super sunny and hot here. Keep your eyes out. We've got more of these workshops coming up every Friday. Next week is Discover the World of Matter, Solids, Liquids, Gases. The week after that is Discover Things That Fly. And the following week is Discover the Electromagnetic Spectrum. I think that's the correct order. Posters will be going out on our social medias and all that. If you have any questions or comments or suggestions, feel free to email them or comment them down below. Yeah, tell your friends, tell your teachers. It's a great way to keep children interested in science and keep them busy at home. So thank you so much, everyone, for joining us. Thank you so much, Tanya, and hope you all have a lovely weekend.
Thank you for a very interesting talk.